Making his first state visit to Great Britain, President Trump and First Lady Melania are joined by the royal family and 170 guests at the royal banquet at Buckingham Palace right now, which has been personally overseen by Queen Elizabeth. Joining us now, former Arkansas governor and Fox News contributor Mike Huckabee. Governor, thank you for joining us. You know, they're making a lot out of the protests, although when they showed us the folks in front that were protesting, it didn't seem like there were that many there. Is it possible that people in the UK aren't as horrified by President Trump as the media would like us to believe?
I know everybody would be shocked to think that the media is overplaying criticism about Donald Trump, since they've played it so straight and pure as journalists throughout his entire presidency. And obviously, I'm being incredibly sarcastic. Of course, they're overplaying it. There are people in London who don't like Donald Trump, but there are people in Manhattan who don't like Donald Trump. There are a lot of people who do like him, and a lot of people who appreciate him. And I think if you look at the Brexit vote, it was a part of the same kind of rejection of the elitism and the snobbery in Great Britain that we saw in the United States. People are tired of being looked down upon by people in power, people in the high places, and they've had enough of it. Yeah. Donald Trump represents a return to a little bit of respect for all.
It's interesting, too, because if you hear people on the more liberal side talking about what's going on right now with Brexit, they're saying that the British people have had a change of heart and that they made this vote and now they kind of regret it and they can't get out. That doesn't sound really maybe straight on to me. I don't know. I mean, what is your take of how it's being received now at this point? In the same way that they don't want President Trump there, it seems like they're also, quote unquote, regretting their idea to Brexit and leave.
Well, I was in Great Britain the day of the Brexit vote back in 2016, and it was a fascinating time to be there. I was back in Great Britain about a year and a half later, and I didn't hear a whole lot of people saying, oh, we made a terrible mistake. People tried to make that about race and about immigration solely. It was really about Brits wanting to be Brits and having a great sense of pride about their many years and centuries of traditions and law and culture. They're proud of that, and they should be, like every nation should be proud of its unique culture, its language, its history, its art. And so when people act like that this is all about xenophobia and racism, I frankly think that's the statement of an idiot who doesn't know what he or she is talking about.
And it's always a money issue, too. I mean, they don't want to finance people in other parts of Europe who aren't working, you know, where the government is spending a ton of money and supporting people and the rest of the population isn't working. It's just, you know, it's a straight up bread and butter issue. It doesn't have to do with xenophobia. Like a lot of Americans who pay huge taxes and then, you know, sit there and they're like, wait a second, you know, I don't know how much more I can afford to pay. Let me pivot quickly while we're talking about this to what the president said about the southern border and the idea of putting tariffs on Mexico. The point being that tariffs are horrible for everybody involved, for Americans, for Mexicans, for everybody. But I wonder, I suspect maybe that's the point, that it would kind of hurt everybody so it would get everybody's attention so that they might focus on this issue and maybe call their legislators and say, why aren't you doing something one way or the other to straighten out these immigration laws? What are your thoughts?
Well, Melissa, you hit the nail on the head. The fact is, this could all be resolved without tariffs if Congress would just go to Washington, sit down and do their jobs rather than chase these phony allegations about the president and bring up the nonsense of impeachment. They can fix the immigration situation. There would be no need for tariffs. That's the way to handle this. But I respect that the president is saying, if you're not going to do your jobs as members of Congress, then I got to do something, because we really do have a real, not manufactured, real crisis at the border. It's got to be dealt with. So it's already brought Mexico to the table. Their diplomats are now moving to Washington so that they can sit down and talk through this. That's a plus. Yeah. And it's not the ideal. Nobody likes tariffs, but we don't like our country invaded by hundreds of thousands of people who are running over our border because you've got a bunch of people in Congress who refuse to do their job.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that the Mexicans and the Americans can sit down right away and talk, but Democrats and Republicans can't seem to do that? Governor Huckabee, thank you.